Hey guys, Cyan Trizelian here, the voice of reason. Let's talk about Ukraine, because it's in the news at the moment, especially with what went down in the White House. This is obviously turning into a partisan thing. All the Democrats want us to keep pushing money into Ukraine and keep the war going under the auspices of democracy and freedom and all of that. Whereas everyone else seems to know that Ukraine is probably one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Zelensky has been taking a lot of money out of the money that is being given. He's got massive houses, yachts, all of this, and that he's not getting as a wartime prime minister or a president. So let's get some reality on Ukraine. I know a lot about Ukraine. Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, during the Cold War, and that's how I knew them. And the reason that Ukrainian intelligence is so good is because half of the GRU and the KGB were Ukrainian. They came from Kiev, and they were really good. They were good operators. So when the Soviet Union fell, the same people that we were fighting suddenly became Ukrainians as opposed to just coming from Kiev, because there was not really, Ukraine was there during the Second World War, but it seemed to lose most of its identity during the Soviet Union time. And you got to remember as well is that the Soviet Union lost probably 40% of its land mass, in 1990 with Glasnost. They lost Poland first, and they lost Bulgaria and Romania and East Germany and Czechoslovakia, which was always like a satellite, and Ukraine and Belarus. All of these were part of the old Soviet Union. So it's never been like a democratic country in its history, ever. So all this bullshit about, we got to, look after its democracy. It's really corrupt. The Russians went in there and they got a pro-Moscow government. That got kicked out during the Orange Revolution. Then they put in Zelensky, which is obviously a pro-right government. And the West has seen Ukraine as a bit of a playground. They've been exercising, getting some of their new technology in to trial it in real combat. They've been offloading a lot of their old junky stuff as well and getting top dollar for it. We know that there are all these biolabs. Ukraine has a very, very high Yahtzee population, and military-wise. It's one of the things that Russia didn't want, and half of the country is really pro-Russian and identifies as ethnic Russian and wants to be with Russia. That's just a fact of life. And, Ukraine has been with Russia for most of its existence. So the thought that we are doing something noble, like trying to back up this failed democracy, is totally rubbish. This is a way for the military industrial complex to make a lot of money, and most of that money is not going to the front line. I can assure you of that. It goes through the border, it gets audited, all that type of thing. But Ukraine has suddenly become an exporting nation of military equipment. Well, how does that happen? It's not the stuff that they make. They're getting it, they're selling it, they're using it for dollars, and those dollars are going into corrupt hands. That is what is about to stop. You got to remember as well is that Ukraine has no strategic value to the US whatsoever. It's the grain basket of Europe. It's where all the Russian oil flows into Europe from. Germany is dependent upon it. So the European nations have many horses in this race and should be helping them, which they have. They've been helping them on a limited time, but very, very little compared to what the US has. The US has no tactical or strategic advantage in supporting Ukraine at all. It doesn't help us in the least. It helps a lot of companies. Helps companies like Raytheon and Northrop Grumman and all of these big military industrial complex places. And of course, there is a lot of grift that goes back to certain people. And we have seen that. Certain big bid families, and they've made a fortune from the commission that has been going on. Now, all Zelensky needed to say was to say thank you, but he doesn't feel like he needs to say thank you because he sees the corruption. What's he thanking? You know, you know, he is in a very, very difficult position. Had it not been for the US, Ukraine would have been rolled over a long time ago. They've done very, very well militarily on the battlefield against the second largest army in the world, has to be said. Okay, there is no doubt that the Ukrainians have a massive amount of courage and fortitude, and we saw that when we were fronting up against them in the Cold War. They were the best units. They were the guards units of the Soviet Union. So they've done well. They need to negotiate that peace. You know, they've captured parts of Russia. Russia have captured parts of Ukraine. Both sides just need to give it back and just go back to the original borders. Then these, all these so-called security guarantees. Zelensky sees the only guarantee as being a member of NATO. That is not going to happen, not in a million years. Everybody else has, Romania and Bulgaria and all of those have all joined NATO, and Russia sees this encroachment, of course. You know, so Ukraine needs to get over itself. It needs to join the EU as an economic member. There need to be security guarantees that need to be enforced by Europe, not the US, and it needs to, the borders and Luhansk and Donetsk needs to be demilitarized. Okay, no Russian troops, no Ukrainian troops, and if they do that, they have a chance of keeping their country. Can Russia take the rest of Ukraine? Potentially, with massive losses, and I don't think Putin has the stomach for that. Putin's playing hardball because he knows that he holds a better hand than Zelensky, and if Zelensky doesn't play ball and become, you know, a little bit more gracious, he will be kicked out and someone will be placed in. The only question then will be, will it be a Russian puppet or will it be an American or a European puppet? But it will be a puppet. Anyway, that's my take on it. You know, I spent 20 years in intelligence. I know these people inside and out, and I know what happens, and it's not what you hear in the press. There is nothing noble about this war. In fact, there's nothing noble about any wars, truth be known. So everyone get off their high horse and let's go for peace as opposed to more war and more families mourning their dead. Simon Chazelian out.